So at first, I'm going to have a lot of awareness on how much important stuff I don't know. But like, duh, right? Like, of course that's the case. So if you really care, you don't get frustrated and give up. If you really care, you're like, I'm happy to dedicate years to really deep understanding or to my whole life and implement what I am understanding and then see if it's effective and then iterate again because what else am I here for? Um, it isn't so a couple things. When people start understanding how interconnected all the world issues are, so you build the dam to save some fossil fuels with hydroelectric, but then you killed a whole bunch of species and you caused war downstream between, the people whose ecosystem got screwed and the people upstream who are getting the hydroelectric or whatever. And you're like, wow, it seemed like a good idea in a narrow way, but in a wide way, it actually caused all kinds of problems. When you when you start studying that, at first you feel paralyzed because anything that you think of to improve something is either going to fail or if it succeeds, it's going to make something worse. But that's only because you don't know how all the systems interact enough to come up with something that is good for that area and whose externalities are all positive. After a little while, you start figuring that out. And then those solutions are radically more powerful than the other solutions because all of the stakeholders can come on board. So let me just give you a for instance. Let's say we take people who've been working in regenerative agriculture for a long time trying to, fight big ag. And they have a really hard time because, big ag has a lot more money and a lot more lobbying capability and, whatever, and lawsuit capability, lawfare capability than a bunch of little regenerative farmers have. So yeah, don't go pick a fight with someone way bigger. Like that's not smart. So who is bigger than big ag that is being harmed by what big ag is doing and doesn't know it yet? Well, think about it. I'm going to give US stats because I know them. We could pull the Australian stats. They're probably proportion wise in a similar range. So if you look at the negative health effects of conventional agriculture, both the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides that come into people's bodies that cause chronic health issues, plus the demineralized soil from the fertilizer that also causes health issues. Then you look at the total healthcare spend and what percentage of all the healthcare spend is on issues that food from regenerative agriculture would solve. For the US, there's a complex attribution analysis you would do, but it's roughly $3 trillion a year of healthcare costs that would go away that we're spending on deficit of money we don't have. And so if the Treasury looks at that and says, man, we're in a war over the reserve currency of the world with China right now. It is absolutely critical we maintain it. Our huge deficit spending is a problem. Healthcare is the single biggest area of spend, and we could cut it in half via the regenerative agriculture. And oh, by the way, the regenerative agriculture is actually at market parity with conventional agriculture if we weren't subsidizing the conventional agriculture. It's not even a market. We're subsidizing the big thing in the name of food security, but it's really just because the big companies know how to lobby for subsidies better. So then we tell Treasury, hey, just remove the subsidies, that's all, and maybe move them to the other side. And then we'll be able to, then $5 trillion of capital markets will divest from the thing that's no longer profitable, move into the thing that is profitable. And as a result of that, now, and it didn't cost the government any money. They just had to move a subsidy from one thing to another thing. And now they save trillions in healthcare spend. You tell the DoD, hey, these falling sperm counts correspond to falling testosterone counts, which is why you can't get guys to join the military anymore. The number one source of that is actually from agricultural chemicals. We can change this and you can get military guys again. So now you've got Treasury and DoD going against big ag and big capital markets just following their own market incentive because you figured out how to change a subsidy. This is an example of when you realize, okay, so it's not just that every new solution we might want to do causes problems elsewhere. It's all the solutions that currently exist are causing problems everywhere else. And then we try to solve those other problems with another solution that does it. And the whole thing is basically a racket, right? But as soon as you understand that, you can say, hey, if we're going to solve a problem where the current way the problem's being solved externalizes a lot of harm, we're going to remove a problem for lots of other actors who can now get on our side to want to do this thing. So in battle planning, there's a term called correlation of force and means. Correlation of force and means How many tanks do they have? How many tanks do we have? How much artillery? Blah, blah, blah. How many troops? And you can kind of anticipate, is this a battle we got to back out of or send more troops to or whatever? If you're going to try to change something, it is the way that it is, not for no reason. It's the way that it is by the extremely active activity, strategized activity of people who know how to do stuff, right? The factory farms aren't there just because nobody could figure out how to do something else. And the same with the military manufacturer. So if you want to change it, you're saying, I want the most powerful entities in the world to not get what they want, right? I am going against vested interests. Okay, well, make sure that you have correlation of force and means set up properly. Because let's say you work your butt off with a bunch of nonprofits to get a law passed. So you ban single-use plastics or something. But what made it that way in the first place, you didn't change, which is all the fiscal incentives to externalize the cost rather than not. That law won't last very long. As soon as you move attention off of it, lobbyists will go back and change it back. And they'll usually change it back with protections that make it harder to change it back the other way. So getting a law passed is never the thing. There's no static thing that's a thing. The thing is, are there more forces working on the side of the commons than are working on the side of private rivalrous interests at the expense of the commons? So this is an example of, at first, when you see how interconnected everything is, it's disempowering because to solve anything requires knowing a lot. But then you do the work to know a lot and you're like, oh, wow, now I can actually come up with solutions that don't make things worse. And because they make things better, not just in this specific area, but in all these other areas, I can get the partners needed to actually make the thing happen in the face of the formidable opposition that's there.